Hello there and welcome to Star Wars Comics in Canon, your guide to the wider Star Wars canon through the comic book lens. And to take you on this journey, I'm your host, Mike Burton. And so we begin episode 30. Obviously this chat is actually with myself and Tony, but I thought I would just do a little quick intro-y thing before the chat with Tony gets started. I just want to clarify that we have an Aphra discussion and Darth Vader discussion. I would recommend listening to the multiple episodes that I've done on the Darth Vader comics, which introduces Aphra. Episodes 15, 17, 19, 23 and 29 all make this chat make a bit more sense. However, this chat is also a good way that if you haven't listened to those episodes and you're not really that interested in the Darth Vader comics, but you're interested in the Doctor Aphra comics going forward, then this is a good way of us just kind of generally discussing Doctor Aphra so you have an idea who she is, because in the coming weeks I'm then going to start on the Doctor Aphra run, which basically picks up right where the Darth Vader comics finished as well. So there's a little bit of information of that in the description, but I also want to clarify that me and Tony at some point say something about spoilers for the first volume of the Aphra comics, which is the first 6 issues, I believe. We only really lightly talk about that, so I would say if you're planning on checking out the first volume of the Aphra comics and or listening to my episode specifically about the Aphra comics, which is going to be in a few weeks time, then that's a really good thing to do. I'd say it's not, there's no spoilers in this, so you listening to it, it's like very, very mild spoilers. Actually what happens doesn't get spoiled, and it is a really cool thing. So in the chat we weren't sure how far we were going to delve into it, so I thought I'd just pop this in and say you can still listen to this even if you haven't read the Aphra comics, and if you're going to read the Aphra comics, or if you're going to listen to the episode I do with the Aphra comics, it was still going to work really well as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there, guys, and obviously you can catch Tony on Indie Comic Spotlight, which gets released on Fridays, and then at the end I'm just going to pop in again just to give a bit of insight into what's coming up. So really hope you guys enjoy the chat. This is the introduction. I'm here with Tony Farina. This sounds really weird and disjointed from normal because I'm so used to being like episode 21, like genuine chit-chat. I have to do an intro to things. Yeah. And Star Wars Comics Again, I just get into it. So Here we are into it. I'm here with one of my favourite people, Tony Farina. Tony, introduce yourself and tell people where they can find you.
Oh, hello. Thanks for having me. So my name's Tony, and I'm a Gemini. And you can find me online at Tricycle Boombox is my Twitter. And I have a show on this very network called Indie Comic Spotlight. Mike has been a guest. Mike is a future guest in a few weeks after this. Mike will be on, and we're going to talk together. We're going to interview one of the best working comic writers, Mark Russell. So that's exciting. Very excited about that. That's going to be so fun. That's just like in 2 weeks from now. Can you believe that's going to happen?
I know, it's so weird.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And so, so I'm here because we talked about this the first time we ever met. I grew up a Star Wars fan. My earliest memory is seeing Star Wars, which is what I still call it, which you call episode 4. It was just called Star Wars then, in the drive-in movie theater when I was 4 years old. And it's my earliest memory in life. And so Star Wars has been a big deal to me. But like the other material never really was. It was always just the movies. I had a couple of the Marvel comics when I was a kid of the adaptations of the movies, So I had those, and that was that. And so listening, when you started this show, I just have been trying to keep up to the point where I even got a Marvel Unlimited subscription so that I could go back, because there were some I couldn't find anywhere. And so it was like, well, if I was going to buy all those, spending money on the Marvel Unlimited series made more sense. So I've been reading along with your shows, and I love the show, and it's so informative. And people who don't want to read along, I get it, but you're missing out because while Mike does a great job, there's definitely, he leaves little nuggets of details for us to discover. So I was just excited. So you and I were just talking about this, and I've loved the Vader series. Is clearly the best thing about everything you've done so far. Yeah. That's not your fault because you didn't write them, but I think it's because Kieron Gillen is a genius. And he created Doctor Aphra, who is maybe the greatest character in canon that's my, I love her. So yeah. I'm just excited that you're letting me here to talk about her for an hour or so. Yeah.
It's one of those things as well with Star Wars, and this is the fun story. This podcast is an excuse for me to talk to you, and also for me to just tell this story, which I'm about to say. Let's
hear it.
So obviously Star Wars, I was really into Star Wars when I was younger. My dad was really into Star Wars. He loved Harrison Ford, so he showed me Indiana Jones and Star Wars. And I think my dad quite wanted to be like Harrison Ford, because Indiana Jones and Han Solo, he picked up certain mannerisms from them.
Nice.
And I noticed that more as I'm older. And I'm more into Star Wars now than he ever was, but he really did enjoy them, and he showed them to me. And he used to when new games would come out, he would read the paper, like reviews about video games, and if they're Star Warsy or sci-fi, he would buy them if they got good reviewed, and just surprise me with them of games I'd never heard of. Like some of my favorite games ever were because my dad, he's never played video games ever. He was born in 49, and for anyone who doesn't listen to Genuine Chit-Chat may not be aware, he passed away when I was 19.
Yeah.
So that's like 7 years ago.
My dad was also born in 49.
Really?
Think about that. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, well, I've got obviously two older brothers, one who's 17 years older than me and one who's like 20 years older than me. So the reason I click with you and a lot of the guys in Comics in Motion is because I've got that a lot of the cool, crazy, weird movies and shit that a lot of people my age haven't seen. I've seen them because of my cool brothers. So a lot of random, crazy films. But my dad was really into stuff, like he was interested in what I was interested in. So he never cared about video games, but he looked into video games to buy me stuff and things. And there's a game called Super Smash Bros, which is one of my favorite games ever, and he just bought that for me on a whim, never heard of it, and it's loads of my mates' favorite games ever. And my tattoo here, which have you seen this tattoo, Tony? I can't remember.
I haven't seen that one completed yet. No.
Let's see. I don't know how, it's hard to show you, but like,
yeah, because it's on the forearm.
Yeah, it's much easier in person, but that's Starkiller there, and he's got a lightsaber, and he's force pushing a stormtrooper, and it's basically just the cover art. The cover art of a game called The Force Unleashed, and I hadn't heard of that game, and it's one of the last Legends, big Legends things that ever came out, and it's a game about Darth Vader's secret apprentice between episode 3 and 4 that he trains to surpass Palpatine, and Starkiller is actually the one who ends up basically causing the rebellion. It's a brilliant story. It's probably one of the best stories in all of Star Wars. It's just the character Starkiller is so unbelievably powerful, it makes no sense. Like, he brings a Star Destroyer down from, like, just outside the atmosphere, pulls it to the planet using the Force. So, it's crazy. But basically, my dad got me into Star Wars and that sort of jazz and stuff, and apart from playing the games and watching the movies, I enjoyed it as a kid. I used to have a toy lightsaber and stuff, but then episode 3 came out, and then everything started to kind of die down a bit, for the most part. And then, obviously, my dad passed away 2014, and then obviously Star Wars Force Awakens got announced very shortly after he passed away, and then I went into the sequel trilogy and the new canon with the fresh set of eyes, in a sense, because I was more adult, more mature, and also because my dad passed away. A lot of what I love about Star Wars comes from just a feeling of joy I get from consuming Star Wars. I think that's connected to the passing of my dad and stuff, and a lot of good memories I have. And so basically, when the new canon came in, I watched the films, I really liked them, and then I rewatched the Clone Wars series, and I watched Rebels with a friend of mine who I was living with at the time, and so I got into the canon more, but I hadn't read any of the books, I didn't get into the comics or anything, and then I bought one book called Ahsoka, which is about a character in the Clone Wars, between Clone Wars and Rebels, and it's a really good book, and that was it for ages. And then a mate of mine called Alex Hart, who's been on my show Genuine Chit-Chat, he got me randomly 3 variant covers of the first issue of Doctor Aphra. And some of them, like one of them on eBay at the moment, is going for like $70, something ridiculous. And it's like,
nice.
And there's 3 of them. One of them's not even on there at all. Like one of them, I can't see it on there. Which is
no one will sell it. Yeah.
So, and he said, when he got them for me, he said, one's there's like 100,000 or something. Or one there's like 1 million, then there's another there's like 100,000, there's another there's like 10,000 or something. There's the 10 to the 10 is sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so he got me that, and I was like, well, I've got to buy more Aphra. And I was like, I don't want to read these variant covers because they're bagged and boarded, they're really nice, they're all in the packaging. So I bought issue number 1, which I've got here now. Haha.
Nice.
And so this is my reading copy. And then I really loved it, and I was like, this is weird and crazy and cool and different, and it's not really like, it's nothing even really like Star Wars necessarily. It's basically just Indiana Jones set in the Star Wars universe if he was morally bankrupt almost in certain ways.
Well, the opening scene of Aphra 1 is the opening scene of Raiders, except at the end, when the guy comes out who you think is Aphra, but is really just some other random dude she's the Belloc, and she kills him.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like amazing. It's like the opening scene is the opening scene of Raiders. And then the first arc of Aphra is, the entire the original trilogy of Indiana Jones movies, like kind of compressed into 6 issues. Yeah, it's like a love letter to Indiana Jones. Exactly. It's so smart. Yeah.
I 100% agree. The creator, obviously Kieron Gillen, who he created Aphra, he said he wanted he wanted Aphra to be the moral inverse of Indiana Jones, which is because Indiana Jones is like probably 80% good guy, probably 10% bad guy, 10% kind of neutral. He does kind of a couple of things that you're probably like, probably shouldn't, but generally he's good. Whereas Aphra's like the opposite, where she won't like murder children, but she will kill people just to save her skin. And so it's that
all the
weird,
time. Yeah.
And so the reason I even said that big like overarching story was because Aphra is actually the reason I even do the show, because I got into Aphra, then issue 7 of Aphra is a crossover event with the main run of Star Wars comics, which is Screaming Citadel, and then it crossed me with the Star Wars comics, and then I heard loads of stuff about her involvement with Vader, because obviously the Vader series is basically a prequel to the Aphra series, or Aphra's really a sequel to Vader. And so from me getting those 3 variant covers, within about a year, I had Vader, the main run of Star Wars, Aphra, and then a couple of the sort of mini issues that came out at the same time. You know, I started getting notifications. Oh, there's a Mace Windu miniseries coming out. Oh, I just buy them. Oh, there's a one shot here. I'll buy that. And before I knew it, I had like probably about 10% of all canon Star Wars comics. And weirdly enough, I actually started teetering off with my interest to a degree on the basis that I started dating, I think it was around the time I started dating Megan, and I was trying to save up more money and lots of other things. I just didn't have time, the podcast, genuine chit-chat and stuff. So they took a seat at the back burner, and then obviously I got more into them again. And then once I started the podcast, I was like, I'm going to buy them all. So that long-winded story is basically just because a mate of mine bought me a couple of variant covers.
That's
I now
awesome.
have every single canon Star Wars comic apart from 6 Poe Dameron annuals and the movie adaptations, the comic movie adaptations. They're the only ones that are...
That's amazing.
It is, but it's also kind of sad at the same time.
Because now you can't get any more. Well, now you just keep up with the new ones when they come out, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shame in some way, because actually where I've been buying certain things like the Poe Dameron comics, I don't buy them individual issues because that will cost me a fortune, and some of them are very collectible now. So I just buy the collections, the annuals, the volumes, whatever you call them. And stacking them, they look so much better because it just looks all clean and nice, and they all got numbered and stuff. But obviously the issues, the trade paperbacks normally get released about 3 to 6 months after the last issue of that arc gets released. So it's always a backlog. And because I'm involved in some of the Star Wars communities on YouTube and things like that, and certain comics are running parallel to other comics as well. So all these things, I'm like, I'm not going to wait. Twice a month, I get a nice little box in from Forbidden Planet, and I open it really excited. I was like, it can only be one of 4 comics. It can only be one of 4, but I get excited opening it anyway, even though it can only be the second run of Aphra, the third run of Vader, the second run of Star Wars, or Bounty Hunters. That's it. It's the only things it could be, because nothing else is out at the moment, because obviously it got delayed. But with you then,
that's awesome.
Let's talk about Aphra rather than me just conflating. Sure. Let me give a couple quick
conflate away.
I'll give a couple of quick bullet points about Aphra, because that's what I'd like to do on this show. So her name is Dr. Chelly Lonna Aphra. She was born 24 years before the Battle of Yavin, so it's about 2 years before Attack of the Clones / where the Clone Wars started. So when at the events of the comics, she's about 24, 25, which is my age, which is cool. Well, a bit younger than me. Just to clarify the comics, first set of Aphra comics was the 40-issue run, which is what we're kind of vaguely tackling. The second run of Aphra started 2020, around May time, but because of COVID delays and stuff, it's only on like issue 4 or something. And then the main kind of origin story in some ways of Aphra, kind of, the introduction to Aphra was obviously the 25 run Vader comics, which is where she was introduced. So that's really all the background information I'm going to give, apart from she also appears there's a story in a book called Certain Point of View, which is 40 short stories of different perspectives of A New Hope, and she's in the one called The Trigger. And that's it. I'm not going to talk about Aphra anymore because I just want to talk to Tony. Sorry, guys.
Well, but listen, about that, I read that Certain Point of View, and I didn't care for it.
No.
But the Aphra story was great, and the reader, and I believe she does the audio dramatization of the Aphra novel too. She's called January Lavoie. She is one of the greatest. I'm a big audiobook person. She's like amazing. She does this book series where she reads called The Diviners, and she plays like 15 different characters in it. And really, truly, I didn't know it was one person. Like, she's that good. She's so amazing. So that also, I listened to Certain Point of View at first. And and I couldn't get through some of it because it was so terrible.
I mean,
the Mos Eisley stuff.
I do want to say that I did. Me and Tony.
You warned me.
I did. It's one of those things where I do say to people with the first series of Clone Wars and first certain point of view. I'm one of the biggest Star Wars fans you'll meet. I tell people, certain point of view is cracking in small doses, but there's a slog in the middle. The problem is 40 short stories by 40 different authors, and the problem is there's about 8 of them that are set in the Mos Eisley Cantina, and they're all
for
just
no reason.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing where it's like this caper, and it's basically these 6 people who are trying to like outdo each other in some weird way, or trying to like con each other, and you get each of their stories. I mean, the one with the singer of the band in the cantina, whose name I always forget, that's all right. And I think the bartender, I think the bartender has a story, and his is quite cool because you hear why he hates droids so much, which I think is because his family was killed by droids in the Clone Wars. That's cool. But when you've just got these 6 characters, and each story is like 10, 11 pages, you're just like, I don't care about any of this at all.
Yeah, it was a slog.
I stopped there, right. And then I had to pick it back up again to force myself, and then you get through it, and then all the best stories are like near the end.
Towards the end, the Aphra one is great, and I think I'm going to read the book too, and because January reads it, I'm going to listen to it because she's amazing. But I think of all of the new canon, so to me, the OG, like anything that Lucas created, like even Jar Jar, whatever, those are the people that I consider the original canon. So when I say new canon, for me, this is just my own terminology. It's anything that George didn't create. Mm-hmm. Okay, so of all of the things that I've read that George didn't create that are considered canon, the Aphra is the character that I'm sure he's pissed that he didn't create. Like, she's so amazing, and I can see the appeal, and I can see why she could have roped you in, because she's not just the morally bankrupt Indiana Jones. She's actually the morally bankrupt she's Han Solo. Yeah, if he went a different way, to the point where. So she's following Indiana Jones's life in that first 6 issues. But in the Vader run, she is following Han Solo's life. She's got a Wookiee sidekick. But then there's also some Luke, because she's got an evil version of R2 and 3PO, 000 and BT. So she is this, and she's a woman. So it's like what Kieron Gillen managed to do, I think, was capture our 3 main, Han, Luke, and Leia, cram her into one person. And I think the reason she works in the new canon is because Gillen is aware and is very careful about the other characters that exist, where I feel like in that certain point of view, they weren't thinking about, how do I fit this into the Star Wars world and how do I pay homage to it while expanding the universe? They were just like, what would be cool is this. And then you're like, oh shit, this is supposed to be retelling episode 4 from all these other perspectives. And it wasn't that, so that's why I think Aphra works. That's my long-winded thing about why I think Aphra works, is because it's a love letter to Star Wars while also advancing the plot.
And I would say as well, I mean, you touched upon it earlier, and I did forget to mention it, is the audiobook. Just for clarity for anyone listening, if you don't want to read the 4 issue, or technically 5, because Vader Downey is incredible, if you read the 5 installments of the first run of Vader comics by Kieron Gillen, I would argue that those, as well as the second run of Vader comics done by Charles Soule, are the 2 best works of any Star Wars comic content, I'd say. And like I love this Aphra run as well. I will say that this Aphra run is probably 3rd, but I just think the Vader stuff is so good that you just, it's everything I want from Star Wars. It's basically all the brutality that you don't necessarily get. It's basically, I describe to people, like, if you like the scene in Rogue One where Vader goes badass and kills lots of people, that's basically all of the Vader comics. That's just all he does.
But it isn't, though. I hear that, and I agree. It's not. But what I love,
if that's the thing you love.
Yeah. My problem is the Vader worship. I always felt like it was easy to push Darth Vader on toys and marketing because you didn't have to pay anybody's likeness. Same with Stormtroopers. It's actually in Lee's office, where I have a little flash drive that's a Stormtrooper. Yeah. And, his helmet comes off and he's a flash drive in there. And it's easy to do those things. Boba Fett, why was Boba Fett so popular? It wasn't because Boba Fett's a vicious killer. It's because they could market him and they didn't have to pay an actor, right? I mean, think like marketing wise, if you put Boba Fett's face on something, you're not paying anybody. You're only giving George money. You put Darth Vader's face on it, you're only giving George money. So I think Darth Vader became marketed the way that he was because it was cheaper to market him. But then people just kind of, he's a sociopathic killer. He's not a good guy. Until I read this, like even reading, once I finally see the prequels, I still don't sympathize with him at all. But what Kieron Gillen did is he humanizes him in such a fantastic way. The scene that comes back around at the end of Vader, and for everybody who's not listened to Mike's show, sorry, spoiler time. He, in the middle of the run, he goes to Tatooine just for fun, just for shits and giggles. He goes and he kills an entire clan of sand people, which are called what? I always say it.
Tusken
What are they
Raiders.
called? Tusken Raiders. Sand people is how Luke called them when I first, so that's always what they are.
I said to Megan, I want to clarify, we watched it, Rogue One the other day or something, and I was talking about them, and I was like, what are those things called? Or we watched Clone Wars rather than one popped up, or Rebels. And she was like, Tusken Raiders. And I was like, what do most people call them? I was like, what do they normally get called? And she was like, and I was like, sand people. I was like, sand people, colloquial, Tusken Raiders if you're a nerd.
Well, and it's true. And to me, because that's what Luke, when you first meet them, that's what Luke says.
Yeah.
To 3PO.
I think of it in my head as both. I write Tusken Raiders / sand person. They're just
nice. Okay. So what I love, I messaged you when I read this, when Vader goes to Tatooine and he just kind of goes rogue and kills a whole clan of sand people because they killed his mom. And it was like, fuck, that was so good. That was the moment in all of this, the first six movies, of Star Wars. I never believed it. I never believed in his humanity, even at the very end when he kills the Emperor. Spoiler, everybody, for Return of the Jedi. I still didn't care. Like, he wasn't redeemed to me. It was like, you're a serial killer. Fuck off. And in this, he's still a serial killer, but you see his trauma. And Gillen, whose series Die, I absolutely love. It's about people who get caught inside of a role-playing game. Oh, is so good. He's so good. And he deals with like childhood trauma in that too. And so it's like he focuses on the childhood trauma. We forget that Anakin was a slave. We forget that he's moved from one form of slavery, literally, to another form of slavery, to be a Padawan. And then he becomes a slave to the Empire. So he's never known freedom. So he's been manipulated his whole life. And while that's always there in the background, it's never addressed. Like, so what I love about the Vader books is the way that Gillen gives him humanity in a way that George Lucas couldn't figure out how to do, even though George Lucas wrote it. Gillen is using Lucas's canon, but I don't know. That's my feel. What did you think of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, when I say with the whole Rogue One thing, the reason the Vader comics, I mean, I love action movies, obviously, but they're not my favorite kinds of movies. If you just said, hey, do you want to watch like when people talk about a Vader film, I'm against that, in all honesty, because I just think that they'll do exactly what I don't want them to do with Vader. Like Rogue One of the best scenes in Rogue One, in my opinion, is the Vader scene. But it's
unbelievable.
Because there's nothing in the films. Nothing in the films comes close to that, except probably Anakin killing younglings episode 3. So like, you don't get that level of showing how powerful Vader was unless you explore other content. There's a game called Jedi Fallen Order. Spoiler alert for people who have played it. It's been out for like 2 years now. In Fallen Order, one of the last things you fight is Vader, okay? Now, I want to clarify, you do not fight Vader, okay? You can't fucking fight Vader. Here's what you do. You face him, and you have to fucking run. You try and attack him, you'll get killed immediately. You are with, like, one or two other people who he's just slaughtering people. He's walking down a corridor, and everything behind him is getting crushed because you walk up to him, he'll just lift you up and just throw you through. Like, he is so strong. And in the films, the problem is that you only really see him interact with Luke, and that's when he's weakened, because the connection to the dark side falters because of his care for his son. And so it doesn't quite hit home how not only powerful he is, but as you say, how much when people see him, even because Palpatine, when he speaks to him in the films, more so obviously episode 6, he calls him friend. He says, my old friend, but he's not a friend. Palpatine is literally, as you say, the slave owner. He holds his chains. Vader's suit is exceptionally susceptible to lightning. There's not weird. Palpatine didn't overlook this and go, "Oh man,
it's intentional."
It's like the one, like Vader can't really fight Palpatine because Palpatine is way more powerful than he is in the Force, and Vader's never really learned to be able to deflect Force lightning or do anything crazy like that Yoda or Mace can do. So he's just stuck there being Palpatine's slave. And one of the things I say is that Vader Down is probably one of the best showcases of how powerful Vader is. And him is just pages after pages of beautifully drawn badassery. It's just incredible. And how he's so resourceful. Like he like some ships come at him, so he just lifts some rocks to chuck them at him, and then he takes the gun off of one of the ships and then shoots another ship down. It's all craziness. But also, as you say, Gillen laid the groundwork for the expanded Vader. And with that, what I'd say is the Charles Soule Vader is set...
Which is Vader 2 between Empire and Jedi?
No, that's going to be... Between Empire and Jedi is going to be number 3, which is by Greg Pak, which is ongoing at the moment. Okay. Vader 2 by Charles Soule is set literally seconds after the end of Revenge of the Sith. So,
okay.
So it's interesting. It's between...
So it's out of order, because this is between 4 and 5.
Yeah, so the first run is between 4 and 5. The second run is after Episode 3. The third one is between episodes 5 and 6. It's weird to wrap your head around. But
it's typical Star Wars storytelling.
I think it's because of Aphra, basically. Because Aphra 1 is between... Aphra 1, Star Wars 1, and Darth Vader 1 are between 4 and 5. And then Star Wars 2 and Aphra 2 are set between 5 and 6. But Vader 3 is between 5 and 6. Because I think Vader's the best-selling Star Wars comics. Because everyone...
I believe that.
Yeah. So the thing is, with Charles Soule's Vader, it's set like straight after Revenge of the Sith. And what I love about it is that they touch it in the third run of Vader comics. But in the second run of Vader comics after episode 3, he's still not... Like, when you see him go, no, and all that crap. And then basically episode 3 ends. And then the next time you see him is Rogue One. He takes a long time to actually adjust from being the chosen one of the most powerful and most respected individuals in the Jedi Order, not necessarily by the other Jedi, but the public perception of him, all kinds of things, goes from that to having to basically hide in the shadows, be weaker than this master who he never really wanted to be he never wanted to be anyone's slave or anything. As you say, he wanted to rise to the top. And so it shows him really struggling with the suit itself. Like, the first few issues is him feeling the suit and being like, this feels weird. And then the next one's him getting his lightsaber, his red one and stuff. So that, and him not being able to connect with Padme, and there's a whole arc which is incredible, I won't spoil, but it's him trying to get Padme back. It is insane. It is literally my favourite arc in any Star Wars thing. But I do not believe that could have happened, and Charles Soule couldn't have done that without Gillen giving this doorway into Vader.
Yeah, I agree, because I think what Gillen does, and this is what is so clever, and this is why Aphra works as a Vader. Yeah, it's why Aphra works as a Vader spinoff, because he found, again, I think what George always wanted to do was this. I think George, hopefully he reads these books and is impressed that somebody saw what he was trying to do. He just didn't have I think Lucas is like a big picture guy, he's got great ideas, but he's not great with the details. And I think that's why in Phantom Menace, he went overboard with the details, because that was the criticism, is like, George, because even Harrison Ford used to say to him, dude, I don't want to say this crap. And he would and they had one of arguably the greatest ghostwriter in all of moviedom on their set, in Carrie Fisher, right? I mean, so, all the movies that she went around and fixed and script doctored. So I guarantee there's a lot of the original trilogy that are fixed, where Harrison Ford would look at her and she would tell him what to say, and then he would probably say that instead. He's like, this is bullshit. So I'm sure that's why he overreacted. And so I just think but he still gave us this beautiful world that makes me happy. And it brings so much joy to your life, and it brings so much joy to my life. And I think Gillen saw what he wanted to do with Darth Vader, and what I think George thinks he did in episode 6, but he didn't do. So he's like, all right, I'm gonna go back, and as an excellent, Kieron Gillen is an amazing writer. And I think what he does is he's like, I'm gonna take your big idea, and I'm gonna do the details that you were unable to do. And so that's why Aphra works as a spinoff, because again, there's nuance. She is bad. Like your thing about her being, the inverse of Indiana Jones. So she's 80% bad. Yeah. But she's 10% good. I like her a lot.
This is my problem is that regardless of her sexuality, if I met her in real life, I would fall completely head over heels in love, because the funny thing is, it's opposite to normally, well, maybe my youth, not so much anymore. Megan, I love her to pieces, she's the best, but Megan is the kind of woman I want to marry and have in my life, because it's all the cool stuff and like that. But if I was like a single man and you're strutting along the town, I don't think I've ever done it in my life. Aphra's the kind of girl that those sorts of way too badass.
She's your manic pixie dream girl.
100%, exactly. Like Ramona Flowers connecting to Scott.
She is Ramona Flowers. Yeah.
My issue is girls who are too cool for school is what my sister-in-law used to say. Once you think they're too cool for anyone because they are actually very intelligent and normally are just sick of people, often guys, just trying to one-up them. And they are on another fucking level. They're the girls I could never get and I don't necessarily want. But that sort of, she's the perfect, that kind of girl. Do you know what I mean? Where it's not to objectify her and make her only look like that, but her personality is so strong. And the reason it works for Vader so well is because obviously Vader is one of the most badass characters in history of movies or anything, because as you say, he's basically just a stone cold, ridiculously powerful sociopath, psychopathic killer who's got, relatively speaking, no weaknesses apart from Palpatine. So it's like,
and his mental abuse and his post-traumatic stress. Yes,
exactly. So, but obviously, a lot of those things help him because the more, of course, with the dark side of the Force, the more fucked up you become, the more powerful you are. Essentially, and the thing is, the reason that Aphra works so well with Vader is because Vader by himself, he doesn't say a lot, and he doesn't do a lot. He walks in, he cleans out, he walks out. Yeah, he is like a supernova. And the thing is that Aphra, she's more like a whirlwind in a sense. And the good that you get them together, you get this giant, beautiful looking firestorm where it's just, she is brilliant dialogue and she's human. And because how much of the Aphra series, the standalone Aphra series?
Just the first 6. I didn't know how far, so I didn't want to read too much. I saw the crossover because the cover of issue 7 as her and Luke,
it's the Screaming Citadel. That's the
So I was like, okay, I wanted to stop because I'm not caught up with the main run of Star Wars, so I didn't, I needed to wait.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with the show, is trying to kind of keep everything. But the thing is with the reason I ask is just because I won't spoil it because I hate spoilers, but like as Aphra goes on the series, you get more about her backstory and more about how, you do get a touch of it because this first arc is about her dad, essentially.
It's the third Indiana Jones movie. It's a bit of everything. It's the first. It begins with Raiders, but it ends with Last Crusade.
Exactly.
It is the plot of Last Crusade.
It is. It genuinely is.
So no, spoilers. But if you've seen Indiana Jones: Last Crusade, you know every beat. Beat for beat, it's all there. Right. It's so good.
It is incredible. And so what I think with what it does with the Aphra is it flushes her out as a character even more. You get more of a backstory, gets more time to get to know her. But with her introduction in the Vader stuff, it's just she's smart talking. She is the Han Solo. She's got those quips. She's got those smart arsey things. And you get those moments where she says something and Vader looks at her and then she's like, "I'm really sorry." And it's like, that Vader's like, she's just useful enough that I can't kill her yet. And she knows Vader's going to try and kill her, like the whole time.
She outsmarts him.
Yeah.
Which I loved. That is, Vader's not smart. No. Anakin isn't smart. And so I appreciate that Gillen never tried to make Vader. Vader is dumb because Anakin is dumb. And again, because Anakin's like physically gifted. That's what he was as a child. That's why he could pod race. No other humans could pod race. That's his line, right? And so he's, he builds 3PO, but he's like, his intelligence is kinetic intelligence. He's not book smart, right? So, but Aphra is book smart and she's worldly smart. Vader only knows what he knows, what's in front of him. His world is small. And like you said, he is, the saying is, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, that's what he is. He is a sledgehammer and everything looks like a wall that needs to be knocked down. Where the Aphra sees that in him too. So from the minute she meets him and gets roped into him, she's already figured out how to beat him and she led him there. And so what a payoff, what great writing that right from the beginning, she says exactly what she doesn't want him to do so that he would do it.
Yeah. Fuck.
That was genius.
It's so good.
I applaud.
It is amazing. It's just like, there are going to be spoilers, so we'll just say what happens. Obviously, it's just like, because this is meant to be.
Well, you've said this already in the last episode.
Yeah,
said
exactly.
What happens to Aphra.
So people should have listened to last week's episode anyway. Yeah. But it is, because I think in one of the first conversations her and Vader ever have on one of the moons of Antham 13 or whatever the hell it is, and she says to him like, "When you're done with me and you have to kill me, can you kill me by put your saber hilt to my throat and ignite it, quick death. The last thing I want is to be ejected into space, because that's my biggest fear in the entire world. I can't deal with anything on that. Please, please, please. And obviously, it's 25 issues of Vader, and with Vader down in the middle as well. So it's like, the Aphra thing doesn't happen till the very end, and I think the Aphra stuff happens around issue 3 or 4. I think is when she's introduced. Might be, I think it's around there. It might be.
It's in that
6.
first arc. She comes in the first 6 issues for sure.
Yeah. So it's like, it is, as you say, it's a payoff, because also when you're reading these, I think these issues were releasing. I don't think it was once a month. I think it's twice a month. I think, or once every 3 weeks.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay.
It's something like that, because some of them release monthly, but others don't. The scheduling of Star Wars since the start has been a mess for me, but it's basically just like that amount of time, and then she gets ejected into space, and you're like, when you're reading it for the first time without realizing there could be other Aphra stuff, you're like, this could be the end of an amazing character. It could be, because she's just the brilliance about Aphra. She's a comic character,
right? Because she's not in the movies, and so because this is canon and she doesn't show up anywhere. You know that, just like with Rogue One, as we were saying off the air when we were chatting with Megan before we started talking, like you go into Rogue One, like I went into Rogue One and I looked at my kids and I was like, they're not all going to die.
Yeah.
Just, and they were older when, they were in high school when I said this, but it was like, just be prepared. And, because when they were little, I was showing them Buffy when they were way too young, probably. But we went into the episode of season 5 when Buffy dies, and I said before we watched it, I'm like, Buffy dies on this episode, but don't worry, she's back in the next episode. It's okay. They stopped uncontrollably, and they were like, 5 and 6 or 6 and 7. So at 16 and 17, though, like I'm like, okay, just so you know, they're like, but you haven't seen this yet. I'm like, right, but none of these characters are in the next movie, which is the first movie. So that's why I thought for sure Aphra was going to die. I mean, I knew the Aphra series existed, so I knew she must have survived, but it could have been a prequel. I really truly didn't know until I started reading it. So it was such a dodge, because she doesn't exist in the other movies. No. So at some point she has to die, or she has to go deep undercover.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right. So it was, she's an expendable character. It doesn't matter how popular she is. She can't make it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it's she's the only character who's got her own, she's the only character who's got her own series of anything in the comics that hasn't been in the film. Even the miniseries that I've tackled on this show, there's Captain Phasma, Mace Windu, Kylo Ren. All of the miniseries are about main characters in the films. There's not even there's the only comics about characters even in Star Wars Rebels or Star Wars Clone Wars, which is in the layers of canon. You've got movies are top tier, the next tier is the animated shows, the next tier is books, and then the bottom tier is comics, and then below that is reference books. That's, if anything is said in a movie that contradicts anything else, the movie's the one you listen to. That's
what about the games? Because isn't that how they brought Palpatine back? That was the game, right?
Well, the games, no. Yes and no.
The Dead Speaks, I thought, was in a game.
It is, yeah. Operation Cinder, which is tackled in the comics of the Shattered Empire comic, which is like the 3rd episode I think I did, or something like that. There is Operation Cinder, and there's these bots that have got Palpatine. You have to give them your blood if you're an Imperial officer, and then Palpatine's face will ignite on their droid face, and it will talk to you and give you some sort of thing to do. In the game Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is the first canon campaign of the new canon, it's the first campaign, and it's about Operation Cinder, which is after Palpatine died, what he did to kind of rid the galaxy of the Empire. That's basically the plot. And Palpatine is in that, but people all know he's dead, kind of. But you've got these droids kind of still doing his dirty work.
Gotcha.
So that's where the thing comes from. But the main big, there's now 3 canon Star Wars games with stories, which is Battlefront 2, which is the first one, Jedi Fallen Order, which is absolutely insanely good, and that's set after it's like 5 or 10 years after episode 3, and then you got Squadrons, which is out now, which I haven't actually played yet, but that's going to be around episode 6-7ish, I think. But with all the comics and things, you've got all these characters that are, you've got, the Kylo Ren comic comes out, and you're like, oh my god, Kylo Ren, because he's such a main character in the sequels. You're like, oh shit, it's a really good series. There's no, and what I was going to say is, with Clone Wars and stuff, Clone Wars was massive and things, and Ahsoka is a massive character in it, and Rex is pretty massive as well, but the only comic you even get touching anything to do with Clone Wars, is the Age of Republic one-shot comics. There's a special that has 3 mini comics in it, and in that, one is about Rex, one's about Asajj Ventress, who's in Clone Wars, and she's the one in Dooku Jedi Lost, the main one you hear.
Mm-hmm.
And so even in comics, almost no one gets touched unless they're from films. So when Aphra came out, the whole community was like, Aphra's getting her own comic series. Like, you don't get anyone. The only main series you've got is with Rebels. You've got a character in it called Kanan, and he had like this 12-run series, so it was like a bit bigger than a mini series. He had that. Aside from that, there's none. There's no one else. A lot of the characters, even in books, don't necessarily even get mentioned in comics and stuff or anywhere else. So it's so weird that they put a gamble on Aphra, and it's a gamble that paid off so well, because one of the other things I want to see on the show, Taika Waititi and Kathleen Kennedy are making a Star Wars movie together. If anyone doesn't know, Taika Waititi made Thor Ragnarok, Jojo Rabbit, Boy, and Hunt for the Wilder People, and he's also the voice of
What We Do in the Shadows too.
Yeah, What We Do in the Shadows, yeah, the movie, indeed. And I think he produces the series as well, but it was his idea to do that thing. And he's the voice of IG-11 in The Mandalorian. Kathleen Kennedy is the current top dog.
And always.
What?
Hasn't she been a top dog at Lucasfilm for a long time?
Yes, I believe that she was like second to Lucas, and then
didn't she make them? She survived the merger.
Yeah, I think Lucas. What the rumors say is that Lucas, his condition was he would only give it up if Kennedy was the top of Lucasfilm.
Okay.
For a certain period, like everyone suspects it's probably a decade. That's kind of what people are thinking, but she's always been involved with Lucasfilm, so she's got that. And so her and Taika Waititi are making a next Star Wars film, and I think it's going to be Aphra, because I mean, it sounds weird, and I may be wrong, but I have a feeling it'll be Aphra after Episode 6. That's what I think, because there's not any movies set between Episode 6 and 7 yet, so it'd be a good anthology movie to fit in there, because then you've got the two between you've got Solo and Rogue One, which are between 3 and 4, and then you have a nice space between 6 and 7. She also. Star Wars don't like repeating themselves too often, weirdly enough. Like, you don't get the same content released over and over and over again. But Aphra, you did, because the Aphra audiobook is just her involvement in the Vader comics, but from her perspective, I think it's like a diary she's writing.
Oh, cool.
Cool. So it's her first person narrating it, and there's extended scenes in it. There's like, I think about 10 or 20% new content, but the rest of it is like certain scenes from her perspective that you get, which is quite cool. I haven't listened to it for full clarity just because I wasn't that interested in it, because a Star Wars YouTuber I really like listened to it, and he basically said 10-20% difference, if that. But why would they release an audio drama? And they've only made one other audio drama, which is Dooku Jedi Lost. All the other audio books are just audiobooks of sound effects. The audio drama specifically, Aphra is the second audio drama. They're doing it to retell Aphra's story in the Vader comics, because that's the only story which has Aphra in it that doesn't have her name attached. So if you're getting into Aphra and you're I want to get all the Aphra content, you buy the first run of Aphra comics, you buy the second run of Aphra comics, you're missing all the Vader stuff. But if they release the audio drama, then you get all her backstory. And why would they go over content they've already done previously if they're not building up to something? They don't build it up for books. She's already got 2 comic series out, other than an animated series or a live action series for Disney Plus, which I suspect. Could you, Tony, think of anything cooler than a Doctor Aphra series, which is basically just every episode is like a whole film of Indiana Jones, but with 000 BT1?
That would be. I currently don't. With Disney Plus, I kind of turn it on and turn it off and turn it like we do with all of our. We don't have all our streaming services on at once, so Disney Plus is off right now. I would be on. I'd turn it right the fuck on. I would love that. I'm all in on that. I haven't even watched The Mandalorian yet because I was trying to watch all of the other the Clone Wars, and I didn't get through it all.
Because you started series 1, and I told you not to.
I did, but I was a completist. I know what you told me. I'm not trying to say you were wrong. I'm just saying I personally had to complete. So anyway, I think that would be amazing, and I think Taika Waititi, because she's funny, because Aphra's funny, I would hope that Taika's smart enough that he would bring in Kieron as an advisor, because it's his character, just to get her tone right and to make sure that he did that.
He isn't doing the second run, just to clarify. The second run of Aphra comics is done by Alyssa Wong.
Okay,
but Gillen stopped doing Aphra after issue 19 as well.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
I would like him to get on the thing because he did create the character. I agree, but I thought I'd let you know. Unfortunately,
yeah, no, that's fair. Well, he's busy. He's got Wicked and Divide, and he's got Die, and he's all over the place. I mean, he's an amazing comic writer, and I'm actually be covering Wicked and Divine towards the end of the year on my show with Faye Clark. And I think that Aphra, that makes perfect sense what you're saying. I know that Rian Johnson still has the plan to make his own non-Skywalker trilogy, and I just assume that Joseph Gordon-Levitt will be the star of that because Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in every Rian Johnson movie, right?
And he hasn't been in Star Wars yet. And he hasn't been in Star Wars yet. So that makes perfect sense.
No, he did a voice. He did a voice in the second in Rian Johnson's Star Wars
Last
movie.
Jedi, yeah.
Last Jedi. He does one voice, Candlebright. He does he's just a voice. He's the one who points to Rose and Finn when they're running away. That's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah. But so, I suspect he'll be the star of whatever Rian Johnson's doing, which I'll watch the shit out of, because I feel like when you build a world, and this is why I think Aphra works and why I agree with you that would be genius. And if they want to bring it in, I would be fine if they also made it into movies. I get what you're saying though, as a series, it would be great. I really like the reboot of, and I may have said this to you, she reminds me of the Lara Croft character a little bit too. And the reboot of the Lara Croft movie, the one with, I can never say her name.
Alessandra or something, isn't it? It's some sort of...
Vivandicure, yes. Oscar winner whose name I can't say. She's great. It was really fun. I really liked it. And it was like this Indiana Jones sequel we all wanted. I thought, the new Tomb Raider. So I think, yes, making that would be fantastic. I would watch the shit out of that. But I feel like if Taika wanted to make a film trilogy of her too, that would also be fine, and then we'd find out how she dies or if she doesn't die. He could, because Taika's such a smart writer, I think he could look at 7, 8, and 9 and figure out somewhere some character in the background who actually is Aphra. He could squeeze her in to continuity if he wanted to, or even go back to 5, 6, and 7 and go, because that's what this is doing. It's rewriting the backstory of 5, 6, and 7. So he could even go back and find a spot in there, some character in the background who's in a mask, and that's Aphra. And start there. I would be all in. I think it's genius. I think that's a smart. You mentioned that on one of the shows before too. I think that's what will happen. And if you have made this into existence, clearly they need to bring you on as a consultant.
I mean, that would be my dream. Would literally just be them sending me early drafts of Star Wars stuff, and I read it and go, because you've got a guy called Pablo Hidalgo, who's basically the king of canon, as I kind of deem it, because him and Dave Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy, they're like the trifecta of the reason the new canon works. A lot of people say it doesn't. They can fuck off. If you don't like the sequel trilogy, that's fine. I accept that. I do not think they're perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and the biggest...
You and I will do battle over...
Yeah, we will, in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Life Skywalker, I mean, yeah.
I will defend Last Jedi. I'm one of the few people on the planet who likes
I like them all. I like them all.
I like Rise of Skywalker, I want to clarify. I just think it's the worst of the three. But
it'll be fun to do. It'll be fun to hear you. Yeah.
I'm excited to have defended Phantom Menace and then attack Rise of Skywalker. It's going to be fun times.
Go from one end to the other. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
That's fine. Never apologize for interrupting me, Tony. People need to do it more often. But essentially, it's one of those things with Star Wars where the new canon movies are not great. I will agree with that. However, or not great. I love them. I think they're all great. But there's some serious flaws because they didn't have the groundwork like George did for the prequels. The prequels are a mess in certain ways. What they're not a mess on is continual storyline leading on from itself. They are very clearly from the start.
He outlined it. Yep.
Yeah. You knew, when you look, you see Order 66 is going to happen. Like, you don't see it until you've seen episode 3. But obviously, anyone who says that they had it all set for a sequel trilogy is a liar, because Colin Trevorrow's script is completely different to what JJ's script was. So, that's a big thing. Anyway, but because of the new canon, we've got all these new comics, and because Pablo Hidalgo, he's the head of basically... I can't remember what the term is. I guess the Lucas Story Group. He's the person who knows everything about all the continuity and everything like that. When all new authors write books, they basically have to speak with him and just make sure nothing that they do in their books or say a character is doing in their books contradicts what Pablo Hidalgo and his team is working with everyone else. He's like the central hub for continuity and things. And apparently J.J. Abrams barely spoke to him, which explains a lot.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Whereas Rian Johnson spoke to him loads. So, that's one of the reasons I like Last Jedi as well. Anyway, So the thing is that what I like about the new canon is there's so many things that are interconnecting, and they're now going to be hopefully trying some new things. And series with Disney Plus is the ultimate way of doing that. And I think
Sure.
the Aphra series, to be fair, if they animate it, I would prefer it in live action. But if they animate, they could get away with so much more. Because like with, the character we haven't even spoken about is 000 and BT1, and I'd say
they're so good. Yeah.
They're probably 30% of Aphra's appeal for me personally. Aphra as a character, she is amazing, but the things that really bolster her up is how ingenious 000 and BT1 are.
They're so funny.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. I'll ask your opinion on them in one sec. But the thing I will say about them is because 000 being like a bloodthirsty psychopath who wants to drain the blood of his enemies, that in a cartoon, if it was a PG, maybe a PG-13 or something, that would work okay because you could get away with certain things. If you have that live action, I don't know if that will push too much against what Disney want to do, if you see what I'm saying. So I want to ask, like, what are your thoughts on animated / live action BT1 and 000, but also on just 000 BT1?
Well, I like them a lot. They're really great. They get funnier as it goes.
Yeah.
As you get to know them and their relationship, because they are 3PO and R2. I mean, BT looks like R5D4, the red one from the original. He's built like that. He's not round like R2. He's got the more
head.
conical it's R5D4. That's what he looks like, right? The red one. That's his shape from the original Star Wars. So I like it because it's like, that original pairing was supposed to be R5D4 and 3PO. So it's like if that pairing had gone another way. So I just think that's really funny. So I think they're really clever. I think their tone is right. I think because you learn that 000 is evil because it's the 000 matrix that they tried to destroy. And of course, Aphra, jury rigged it to get it to work for her advantage, but she's also allowing it to live. And so she's like constantly, it works as a look into her personality. As much as they're hysterical, the fact that she's the one who brings him to life and allows him to exist, she could shut him down.
Yeah.
But she chooses not to. So that says a lot about her, about what she needs, and her always putting herself in dangerous situations. And because she's always willing to put herself in dangerous situations, she needs a serial killer, sociopathic robot twins to help her. So I think you're right. I think my concern with putting an Aphra cartoon on Disney Plus is people will let their 5-year-olds watch it. Mm-hmm. And so I think it has to go the Mandalorian route. It has to be a darker, not an MA, but a darker, kind of like a bloodless. BT flamethrowers people. It can happen off screen. Mm-hmm. You can have 000, coming in on someone and then it cuts. So you can keep, every James Bond movie is PG-13, right? And there's how many people does he kill in every single movie? Because it's all bloodless. There's no blood in a James Bond movie. That's what keeps it PG-13. So I think you could make Aphra bloodless because you've got the Wookiee, what's his name? Black Chrysanthemum. He's awesome. What a great character. And he's also flawed, right? He's also broken. He just wants to find out who enslaved him and break them in half. He wants to use the things that they did to him against them. He's like Spartacus, right? That's who he is. And so I love that you've got this Wookiee Spartacus character. And like, there's this scene when he's fighting an entire fleet on Yavin 4. Oh my God, that was awesome. He just destroys all these people by himself. And they're like, oh, it's just a Wookiee. And then we're like, well, it's not Chewbacca, man. And although, you suspect, it also lets you see what Chewie could be. It shows you what a good person Chewie is because he doesn't become, because he's in slavery when you first meet him too, right? When Han first meets him. So it's so good. So I think it has to be live action. The problem is it'll be really expensive. So it would have to be, that's why I wonder if they would just do movies, because then they could give him $100 million budget and he could go. Because I don't know if you get $100 million budget to do a show. Even if you did it over 6 or 7 hours, I think it would work better. That was my long-winded way to say it would work better as live action. I think you and I talked about it. I think Brenda Song should play her.
Yes, I remember. Yeah. We spoke about this.
I think she's a little bit too old now. Brenda is. She's probably in her mid-30s. instead of in her mid-20s.
If it was set between, because what I assume is happening.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
She's going to have to be older, because if it's going to be set between episode 6 and 7, yeah, that's like a near 30-year difference. So
yeah, I think she's the answer. She's such a good actor. She's really funny. Greta Song is really funny, and she's done action. I mean, it's been like action comedy. She did a few on the Disney Channel, so I really think she'd be really good. If you're going to want to get a big name, I mean, if they just want to go find some no-name actor, that's fine too. But that's who I would cast tomorrow. Although Awkwafina's super hot right now in the world, like she's in a lot of. So she'd be she was good in Ocean's 8, so she's really funny. That could work too, but I would cast Brenda Song and give Taika Waititi the thing. His Boy is such a good movie.
I haven't seen it. It's the only one of his films I haven't seen.
Nothing happens. It's about it's a father and son relationship. So I think, and the boy being kind of broken by his deadbeat dad, who Taika plays. He likes to cast himself like he played Hitler, right?
Yeah,
he likes to cast himself as the villain. And so I think because he gets, I don't know his life story, I don't know anything about him, but he really, Hunt for the Wilder People is the same thing. He deals with this relationship, this parent-child relationship so well. Even Thor, even in Ragnarok, he deals with it. So I think he'd be a perfect fit for this, because part of Aphra's deal is she's mad at her dad. She's lost her mom. She's heartbroken and lost. So I think he'd bring the right amount of everything to it.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say Hunt for the Wilder People is one of my all-time favorite films. It's one of the only films that's ever almost made me cry of happiness. Like, I've never cried of happiness in my life. Maybe I will one day. But in that film...
You will.
Yeah, I imagine I will. People tell me I probably won't have kids and stuff, which I could. I see that happening. But in Hunt for the Wilder People, it's just at the start. It's like, I won't spoil the film in any way for anyone, but it's just once he settles in with the family and the sort of mum character tucks him in and says, "You're going to run away tonight?" And he's like, "Maybe." She's like, "Okay, well, I'll leave the door open if you do." And it's like, you just feel so happy because he's had such a crap life and no one gives a shit about him. And they finally do. And it's like such a beautiful moment. And I love it. But yeah, I did a bit of research on Black Chrysanthemum, because obviously with my show, what I'm trying to strive for is the main run of Star Wars comics is ongoing, and then obviously I positioned the Darth Vader releases so they would be parallel to the story as well. So when people are reading along or whatever, then it works with that as well. And I'm trying to do that with Aphra as well. So like the next after this is going to be Age of Republic, and then after that I think is the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi.
Right.
Black Chrysanthemum is in the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi. I didn't even know. The scars on his face are because of Obi-Wan. I only found out today. I found out literally researching this, because I was like, I basically, what I do is, there's a thing called Wikipedia, which is really, really, really good. And the main thing I use that for, because obviously I have all the comics, so I read the comics myself, but it's a good reference point for seeing which characters show up elsewhere. So you type in Black Chrysanthemum, whatever, and then you go down to the bottom and it says appearances, and there's, Doctor Aphra 0 to blah. And then I saw he was in randomly like Star Wars 17 or something, and I was like, what? I was like, no, it's bloody well not. I've read all the Star Wars, I know there's, but I haven't read the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi. So I was like, when is he in that? Maybe it's the background. I click on it, and it's about Black Chrysanthemum being hired by Jabba the Hutt, because there's this 3 old Ben Kenobi comics, and they're like a vaguely continuous story. And I've not even read them, as in, I haven't tackled them on the show. I haven't actually read them at all, because I started reading the Star Wars comics after the Screaming Citadel. So all of the Star Wars comics that I've actually been doing on the show, I haven't read before. I've read the Vader ones, and I've read Aphra, and I've read a lot of the miniseries, but the main run of Star Wars, I started around issue 30. So I never read the old Ben stuff. So finding out that old Ben and the Black Chrysanthemum stuff is in there, that was news to me today, and I was like, man, it seems like I'm really organised with Star Wars comics and canon, where I'm managing to start the Aphra series around the time where Black Chrysanthemum is in the old Ben Kenobi journal, but I just fluking my way through it.
That's awesome. No, and I think that's great. Oh, I think that's great. I didn't know that. That's so cool. Yeah, so the Star Wars stuff, I've been trying to keep up with you, but I got behind because I didn't have Marvel Unlimited, and now that I do, but I also am reading stuff from and I'm always reading. Like I read a Hannah Arendt book called The Origins of Totalitarianism over the last week, which is brutal, by the way. It's turns out that in 1961, she knew that Donald Trump would be president. So she wrote a book to warn us, and we didn't listen. It's frightening. It's frightening. Like, oh, fuck. Anyway, sorry. So I'm always reading. So anyway, that was my point, was I haven't read. Now that I've got Marvel Unlimited, I'm going to go back, because with Aphra 7 catching up to Star Wars, and I've read Vader Down. So, but that was easy to do because I got the Vader Down book, which just goes back, like the digital version just has the Star Wars ones. I didn't have to flip back and forth. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go back to Star Wars 1 and start, and then read all those so that I can catch up, and then I can read the Aphra ones. Because now that I'm not reading them as collections, I'm not reading them on Hoopla, I'm reading them on Marvel Unlimited. They won't go back and forth. Like it'll be like, the next issue will just be Aphra 18, but I need to read Star Wars 17.
Well, the good thing is the Screaming Citadel has been released as its own thing.
Oh, it has. Oh,
so
okay.
Its own trade paperback. So what you should be able to do is either they'll I don't know how Marvel Unlimited works, but either they'll cleverly say the next issue, if you read, because Screaming Citadel 1 is its own thing, just like Vader Down.
Oh, it is.
Because Vader Down 1 and Screaming Citadel 1 are their own things, and then the second issue is then the Star Wars, then the third issue.
Oh, yeah, no, on Marvel Unlimited, it's not that way. It just goes to the next issue of the book you're reading.
Right.
So you have to find it. Like you can, but right. So I can just go get the trade from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Same as the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi, because like they are releasing that in the next couple months of the trade paperback version of the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi, and that is the 3 individual issues which are in the annuals of in the volumes of the other Star Wars comics, which I haven't tackled. I think it's like 17, 20, and 24 or something. But then the next Star Wars thing I'm doing, which is Yoda's Secret War, which is the Star Wars collection before Screaming Citadel. That is so meta. It's got Luke is reading the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi, and in the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi, Old Ben / Obi-Wan is recalling a story that Yoda told him set before Phantom Menace. So,
nice.
And I've read the story yet. So the trade paperback collection of the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi are the 3 standalone sort of Ben comics, and then also Yoda's Secret War within that, which is quite cool too.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's really, doing this show has made me appreciate Star Wars a lot more, because when I was saying with Wikipedia and stuff, like I don't talk on the show about how I don't go on the show and go, yes, I use Wikipedia for 18 hours on this. Because it's like, I don't just seem like, hey, I'm a glorified Wikipedia reader, because that is not what I do at all. It is genuinely, I've got everything, and I'm basically just trawling through a lot. Like, I literally, I did it the other day while I was just recording, and then there was one tiny detail I couldn't remember, and I was like, I'll cheat, I'll go on Wikipedia. But Wikipedia doesn't have the full plots of every individual comic issue in there. It normally has like a synopsis. Certain big issues like Vader Down, it'll have the whole thing, but other ones it doesn't. And I was like, there's one little plot detail, and I couldn't remember it, and it wasn't online or anywhere, so I had to go in my comic bin and trawl through, and I was like, I think it's but with Wikipedia, when I did the Dooku stuff, that was good. The whole Dooku profile thing, because trying to wrap your head around Master and Apprentices chapters which go back in time, with Dooku Jedi Lost, which is also half back in time, as well as it's just become such a fucking mess. The amount of time it took me to figure out when Dooku even left the goddamn Jedi Order was so difficult.
But it was good. You did it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I would say that Wikipedia is a great thing if people want to find the connective tissue, because that is a lot of the time when I'm just like, oh, Admiral blah blah blah, he's in the. I don't have the memory of a god where I know where every Star Wars character comes from. It is genuinely like, oh, I know the Star Wars characters in these 3 other comics. I wonder what else they appear in, and then normally I end up sending myself down deep rabbit holes of finding out when these random one-off characters in the film for like 1 second, where in all the kind of content they are.
But, it's good. And then we'll have to go, because I'm going to have to get back to work before I have to make dinner in a little bit. So I should have said that before we started. Sorry. So you can edit that out. Sorry. But the one thing about that is accurate, that why that's important, is because Lucasfilm marketed toys, and that was his big deal, was I want all the toy rights, and everybody laughed at him, and they're like, sure. So then he made the deal with Mattel and made a bajillion dollars. And those original run of Star Wars toys that were out when I was 4 years old, every character in the cantina, which is why I think look at this title background, why I think everybody thought they wanted a deep dive into the Mos Eisley cantina, is because every character had a toy. Hammerhead had a toy. Of course, Greedo, you need Greedo, but then there was like the Walrus Man, and there was like a short version of him and a tall version of him. And I had them both. And there was like everybody had a toy and that had a name. Like, so Lucas is one of the first people who named everybody in the background. Mm-hmm. And so that's where he thought he was doing well with the details. But we're like, just because you give that guy in the background a name doesn't mean you're good with details. It just means you built a cool rule and that guy has a name. But who gives a shit about that guy? You know what I mean? So I think that's why he thought he was good at that. So I think it makes sense, though, that there needs to be a place that does that, because that is the legacy of Star Wars, is that everybody in every room has a name. Every, like you just talked in the last episode about the guard, the pig guard who survives the end of the Jedi, survives Jabba's death.
Oh, yes, yeah. Malakili, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. He has a name, and so because George Lucas gave him a name, he can have a story for somebody to dig into. So I think that's why your show is good, why Wikipedia exists, and why the universe is never ending, because in the background, that character has a name, that character did a thing, that character has a story. How did Salacious Crumb come to be, in Jabba's sail barge? Well, let's find out. And so, so it makes sense to me that you can go down those rabbit holes, because that's always been the history of Star Wars because of the toys. Every character had a toy, therefore he had to have a name. You can't just have a character and be like, random guy thug from Mos Eisley. It had to have a name. And once you do that, those names aren't said in the movie.
No.
But once that happens, that's the thing. So I think we're the canon content while you're doing, yeoman's work for all of us, is those of us who care about this and want to know more. We don't have to do all the work you're doing. So, I mean, you're doing it for free, which is silly. So, but I appreciate it. I'm not paying you for this and you're letting me come out and talk about it. That's somehow my reward. So it's impressive. And so hopefully, that'll be the dream. We'll all start a campaign to get you in front of Kathleen Kennedy and you can be part of the team. Because
that's the dream.
I've said it to you repeatedly, like you could put this all together too and make it a really accessible way for everybody. Because I think what you do is you humanize it and you make the references back. And it's like, not everybody wants to spend the time you do, but we want to know. Like, we're curious, and then we forget. It's like, I can't tell you how many times my wife and I'll be like, oh yeah, we should look up blah, blah, blah. And then 15 minutes later, you forgot to do it. So you are that for us. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, I have a lot of fun doing it. So I think we'll kind of wrap up here. I want to ask you a couple of things off air, but I'll just so you don't zoom off immediately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, what I'll say to the listeners is that I'll probably end up tackling the full volume 1 of Aphra in a couple of weeks' time, just as in my usual format. Just because what I want to always make sure of this is it's a thin line I try and balance on, but you are the main person who I ask for criticism and stuff, because I know you give me an honest thing, which is just like, I try to have it so it's accessible if you've basically barely watched Star Wars before, but also if you've watched every Star Wars film a billion times, it's still interesting. And the way I try and do both genuine chit-chat and Star Wars comics in canon, and I basically go, if I wanted a Star Wars comics podcast, what would I want from it? And it's basically, I don't want theories, because bluntly, I don't give a shit about theories. If completely honest with you, I don't care what you think, as in, I don't listen to people on YouTube go on about the big theories of what happened in episode 9 before it came out, because honestly, you're either going to be right and it's a spoiler, or you're going to be wrong and you're talking to you about it's pointless. Talk with friends.
Right, so just watch the movie. Yeah.
Talk with friends. I love talking with friends, but I don't want to spend hours of my time theorizing and putting it online. I want to know what is canon. And what I do is I go through the comics and I go, here's the vague narrative. And as you say, I'm glad you said it earlier on, which is, I specifically leave out things. And sometimes I leave out some really good stuff because it is amazing. But if I read it, it's just cool. But some of the dialogue of 000 is so good, I specifically avoid it. Because I'm just like, if you read the comics, you'll get the reward of reading it without me just picking out all the best stuff and you getting all this filler. So I do appreciate that, Tony. Obviously,
true.
Your show, Indie Comic Spotlight, it comes out the day before Star Wars Comics in Canon, because you and I are ultra regulars. I think we've missed since we started our shows. I've missed 1 week, I think.
You missed 1 week when you guys went on vacation, I think.
Yeah, terrible person I am. I'm awful.
How dare you? Have a life.
I know, and I don't have Star Wars Comics in Canon recorded ahead. I do with Genuine Chit-Chat, but I don't with Comics in Canon. But obviously your show comes out the day before mine, and there's no reason to not listen to your show. And obviously I've been on your show, and in the show notes of both Genuine Chit-Chat and Star Wars Comics in Canon, I think I have mentioned me being on your show as well. But let all the people know one more time where they can find you, a tiny description of your show, and then we'll hang this up.
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Tricycle Blue Box. My website is arfarina.com if you're not on Twitter, but you want to send me a note. There's a contact me button there. You link to all of our shows are linked there. There's a link to one of my appearances on your Genuine Chit Chat, plus all this stuff from Comics in Motion is linked there. And there will be a link coming. It'll be a few months down the line, but I've written an essay for Scott's Dredd book, a political commentary on Judge Dredd. And I've written about the Days of Chaos, and that's coming out in February. So you'll be able to link there. Now it's February and you're listening to this show, you'll be like, oh, that's cool. I'll go to Tony's website and I'll buy that book. You should. So I'm very excited about that. So thanks, Scott, for letting me write that essay. So that's where you can find me. So Indie Comic Spotlight is just a show where we don't rate them on there. I don't give them a rating. Max does that on his show, and I appreciate that Max does that because I think he's trying to show the variance of the biggest and the best in DC and Marvel. And so I think giving them a rating is good to give people an idea of what their likelihood is that they want to read it. But for me, the reason I don't do a rating is because I've covered some books I don't really particularly love, but I just want to talk about. And I kind of apply I'm an English teacher by nature, by trade too. I've always been a big reader. So I always try to look at things on a deeper level. And you and I had a really interesting, deep conversation when we did Second Coming, and we'll do it again when we interview Mark. So that's my show, deep dive into non-Big Two stuff. And it's hard sometimes to not want to give it a rating, to be like, this is 5 stars, you should totally fucking buy it. But I don't because I just want you to hear what it's about and, have a thought about it. So that's it. Next week, this is coming out. So this is coming out. So just yesterday I had, Jack, we covered, Firefly, the Dark Horse run on Firefly. And Greg Pak, who is writing Darth Vader now, he's doing the Boom Studios Firefly. So we talk about that too. So that's what you just heard yesterday. And if you haven't, you should go back and listen to Jack and I talk about Firefly.
Exactly. And, Indie Comic Spotlight is one of the many amazing shows on Comics in Motion. It's so awesome to be a part of it. It's just, there's so many amazing shows of like any reason you like anything. And it's like with Star Wars Comics in Canon, I don't give things ratings either because I think, as you say, with Max's show, it works really well because it's like the best of the best. You have to, to a degree, differentiate.
You have to, yeah.
But like your show is about highlighting things that people may not have necessarily found, which are really interesting or different. And my show is like, here's everything that's not in the movies to do with Star Wars, basically, and all these random little side bits and things, all the tiny details. So I am the details that George Lucas misses out. There you go.
You are, and I appreciate you for that. Yeah.
And I appreciate you, Tony. It's always an absolute pleasure to have you on. I'll include all the links in the description, as always. And, well, me and you are going to be regular collaborators forever. So I hope so. I'm coming on your show soon, and you'll be on mine again soon, no doubt. And we did Scott Pilgrim on the TV movies of Comics in Motion.
That was so fun.
So loads of things. If you want to hear mine and Tony's voices, there's never ending amounts of it all the time, just everywhere, constantly.
Amazing.
Awesome. Oh, I hang up here then.
Okay.
And that's the end of mine and Tony's chat. Really hope you guys enjoyed that. If you like this kind of conversational style, make sure you check out my other show, Genuine Chit-Chat. I have had Tony on twice before, I think, on that show. And I've also had certain other guys from Comics in Motion on there as well. So it's a real fun time, in my opinion, which is why I do it so much. I will also say, just as a little thing, coming up in a few weeks, next week I'm going to be doing the Age of Republic comics for Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn, and a bit of character information about them and stuff. It kind of jumps off the Master and Apprentice episode I did a couple weeks ago, so that works really, really well. And then the week after that, I'm going to be tackling the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi, which I touched upon in here. They are the Star Wars main run comics. There's 3 of them that are main ones, which is basically about Obi-Wan's time on Tatooine. Hopefully they're going to be some degree of influence or some sort of impact on the upcoming Kenobi series, but I thought I'd do them because the trade paperback of the Journals of Old Ben Kenobi is coming out, and then also the next issue, or the next next volume in the Star Wars main run is going to be Yoda's Secret War, and that is a 4 or 5 issue arc, and within that is basically the Journals of Old-Ben Kenobi as well. So it all kind of leads onto themselves quite easily. After I've sorted Yoda's Secret War, there's going to be another week where I haven't fully decided what I'm going to do in that week as of yet. There's a few sort of mini-series that I have not yet tackled. One of them is the Lando Double or Nothing comic, which is basically Donald Glover's Lando. Basically, it's just a little prequel to the Solo, a Star Wars story movie. So I think I'm going to tackle that next. I haven't 100% decided, but I've got that. I've now got the TIE Fighter mini-series. I've got that TIE Fighter collection, which is quite cool. And I've also got Vader Dark Visions, which is 5 one-shots about people interacting with Darth Vader. That's quite cool. So I'm going to decide between one of them, and then the following week I am going to be doing the first volume of Doctor Aphra, in air quotes, properly. Obviously in this chat we just kind of spoke about it a bit, whereas in this one, the Doctor Aphra first run, I'm going to do what I normally do, which is, go through it narrative-wise, pick up little connections and things like that, and kind of go from there. And then that'll make the week after that, I'm probably going to do another Age of Republic thing. I'm probably going to end up doing Jango Fett and Grievous, I would presume, on that one. And then the week after that, I will then do the Screaming Citadel, which me and Tony very lightly touched upon in here, and that is the main run of Star Wars crossing over with Doctor Aphra. So that's what you can expect from this show in the coming weeks. Make sure you subscribe, share to all of your friends and family and everyone you know, even if they don't like Star Wars. Send this to them now. Anyway, I've also started uploading things to the Genuine Chit-Chat YouTube channel. I'm basically trying to do 1 or 2 a week of Star Wars comics in canon, just so then YouTube is kind of up to date with it, and then if people would prefer to listen on YouTube to this, you can go ahead. And I have a nice little graphic which also shows the cover of the comic that I'm normally speaking about, so that's fun. Also, make sure you follow me on social media at Genuine Chit-Chat on Instagram, normally the week of me posting the new episode. So as in, I try and do it on the same day. Obviously these episodes come out on Saturdays, but normally it ends up being a Sunday or a Monday, and I'll post, I'll say, new episode of Star Wars Comics in Canon is out, blah blah blah, but then I'll also include photos of, I've got them all in physical copies, so I normally take a photo of the cover of the book, the title crawl, and then each of the covers within it, and then on the odd occasion, if I'm really specifically speaking about some action scene or artwork or mini story or something that happens in there, I'll often take a photo of that as well. When I did the Darth Vader comic last week, I think it was, that was quite fun because I took a couple of photos of that, including the coda story about the Tusken Raiders hailing and worshipping the Wicker Man that they made into Darth Vader. If you want to see what a picture of that looks like, I'm sure you can either Google it, or you can go on my Instagram and then give me a little like, so that'll be nice and fun. Huzzah! Anyway, I'm going to go, guys, or this outro is going to be unnecessarily long, so I hope you guys enjoyed it too. Please send me any feedback you have, if you enjoyed this kind of chat, if you didn't like it, if you have any pointers, blah blah blah, all that usual jazz. Anyway, guys, I will be talking to you next Saturday, and as always, may the Force be with you.